All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Artificial intelligence, it's really way more than just a software update, right? What we're actually watching unfold is a high-stakes weapons race that's literally reshaping global power. If you think AI is just about generating quick emails or writing code a bit faster, you are missing the single most important structural force shaping the industry today. This competition, it's going to dictate every major business decision, every career choice, and every regulatory debate for an entire generation. Think back to 1957. The Soviet Union launches Sputnik. Now, it was just this tiny 58-centimeter metal sphere, basically just beeping in orbit. But man, it completely flipped the technological balance of power. It triggered the space race, a massive, decades-long competition that burned through billions of dollars, but also gave us some of the most incredible engineering achievements in history. The United States didn't panic because of the satellite itself. They panicked because of what that satellite represented. Well, today, we're standing at the very beginning of a remarkably similar geopolitical showdown. But instead of building massive rockets or fighting for military dominance up in space, the world's superpowers are battling for control over the unseen infrastructure of AI. It's kind of like a new Cold War. And the nations that fail to secure their spot in it, they're going to find themselves entirely reliant on systems designed, trained, and completely controlled by someone else. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the American advantage, then we'll check out the Chinese campaign, dig into the European rulebook, see what's happening in the global south, and finally we'll wrap up with the three levers pulling all the strings. Let's start with part one, the American advantage. We're looking at innovation leadership, but also its inherent fragility. So looking at our first major player, the United States, right now they're definitely the ones winning this race. And their secret sauce? It's a massive venture capital ecosystem fueled by some incredible immigrant talent. It creates this wild free-for-all environment that drives rapid innovation, even if they do struggle with regulatory gridlock. China, on the flip side, executes this incredibly patient, state-directed campaign. It's massive in scale, sure, but it is heavily dependent on foreign hardware. And then you've got Europe. They take a very cautious legislative approach. They lead the entire world in making the rules, but they significantly lag behind when it comes to actual homegrown innovation. When you really look closely at the US, the absolute bleeding edge of AI capability is almost exclusively sitting in American labs and data centers. American companies literally built the transformer architecture. They are the home of NVIDIA, and they host the heavyweights OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, Google DeepMind. Plus, US cloud providers are the ones renting out the massive computing power needed to actually run all this stuff. But here's the kicker. This lead is surprisingly fragile. The US regulatory environment is just a chaotic patchwork right now. You had an executive order on AI safety from the Biden administration that was subsequently revised by the Trump administration, all while states like California and New York are busy writing their own complex compliance mazes. And to top it off, their crucial talent pipeline is under serious threat from increasingly restrictive immigration policies. We're talking massive green card backlogs for Indian engineers and tight visa restrictions for Chinese students. What's really wild is just how quickly the US weaponized AI as a strategic asset. Fast forward to May 2026, and the Commerce Department completely shuts down a loophole that was letting restricted chips slip into China via Malaysia. But the real shocker? That hit in June 2026. The Trump administration rolled out unprecedented export controls on Anthropic's frontier models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5. They cited national security concerns over jailbroken guardrails. And guys, this didn't just cut off adversaries. It cut off American allies, too. Anthropic literally had to disable these incredibly powerful systems entirely. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the US views frontier AI not just as some commercial software product, but as a weapon that needs to be strictly controlled. Moving right along to part two, the Chinese campaign. It's state-directed, deeply data-rich, and above all, patient. This brings us to competitor number two, China. Now, they operate a totally different playbook. It's a massive, state-funded campaign completely free from Western market pressures. While the U.S. approach is being steered by venture capitalists desperate for quick quarterly returns, China's strategy is directed by the Communist Party. They have the patience to just pour vast resources into long-term goals. And right at the center of this strategy is a staggering population of 1.4 billion people. That generates data at a scale that just completely dwarfs Western datasets. We usually talk about the Great Firewall purely in terms of censorship, right? But it actually functions as this massive, culturally coherent, legally uncontested data moat. Chinese AI companies train on this incredibly unified corpus, which gives them a totally unique competitive edge, even if it does insulate them from the broader diversity of global human expression. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Those US chip restrictions we talked about, they actually backfired in some ways, inadvertently fueling Chinese algorithmic innovation.
Take a look at DeepSeek, for example. Since they couldn't easily access the absolute highest-end chips, Chinese researchers managed to hit frontier-level performance through sheer algorithmic ingenuity. They were training models at a fraction of what it cost to train GPT-4. It just proves a fundamental economic reality. When you restrict the supply of something incredibly valuable, you don't eliminate the demand for it, you simply redirect it. And in this case, it aggressively accelerated China's push for total technological independence.
All right, part 3, the European rulebook. We're talking regulation first and innovation second. Shifting gears to Europe, we're looking at a completely different philosophy. While the US is sprinting and China is playing the long campaign, Europe is legislating. Their focus is firmly on establishing safety and strict compliance before they allow any unchecked deployment of these technologies. The EU AI Act, which rolled out between 2024 and 2026, sets up this clear, proportionate compliance framework based entirely on risk levels. It outright bans unacceptable risks, like social scoring. Now, it's not the total innovation killer that some tech executives complain it is, but this precaution default posture absolutely privileges massive incumbent companies. Why? Simply because the massive corporations can afford armies of compliance officers, while scrappy startups just can't. As a result, outside of a few rare exceptions like Paris-based Mistral, there is almost a total absence of a homegrown European AI industry. There's no European NVIDIA. There's no European OpenAI. But remember those sudden 2026 American export controls? Yeah, those served as a massive, glaring wake-up call for European leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron actively called it out. And as Bruno Retailleau perfectly put it, Europe suddenly realized that relying on American tech meant they could literally be unplugged overnight. That realization shifted their perspective incredibly fast. You saw German and French intelligence agencies urgently accelerating their pivot away from American contractors like Palantir, moving instead toward European alternatives. The political will to view AI mastery as critically as we view nuclear power, it has never, ever been stronger. So we've talked a lot about the big heavyweights, the US, China, and Europe, but you gotta wonder, how is this massive technological arms race actually impacting the billions of people living outside those borders in developing nations? That takes us to part 4, the global south. The consumers, not the producers. For nations in the global south, places like India, Brazil, Indonesia, Nigeria, this AI race, it isn't really a race for them at all. Honestly, it's more of a broadcast. They are structurally positioned downstream, totally dependent as consumers rather than producers of frontier AI models. Think about the step-by-step cycle of digital resource extraction, which honestly functions like a modern form of data colonialism. A local citizen uses an American or Chinese AI platform. Their user data goes in, training and improving that foreign model. But the value, the actual wealth generated by that improved model, accrues entirely to the foreign owners. The raw material flows out, and the refined product flows back in with a price tag. And trying to leapfrog this by running local open-weight models, that remains a massive uphill battle. Without reliable electricity to power data centers, without affordable connectivity, or an environment that keeps local STEM talent from leaving for higher-paying Western markets, achieving true technological independence is incredibly tough. And finally, part 5, the 3 levers. We're talking chips, data, and talent. Let's pull back the curtain here and look at the final scorecard. Because when the dust settles, the winner of this massive geopolitical race isn't going to be the one with the flashiest consumer chatbot. It's going to be the nation that controls 3 foundational currencies. First up is physical hardware. You absolutely must control advanced semiconductor manufacturing capacity. Right now, those indispensable supply chains and giant fabrication plants are mostly anchored in Asia. Think Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung, and in the US with designers like NVIDIA. China is currently investing hundreds of billions of dollars just to close this gap, while Europe, for the most part, is just watching from the stands. Moving to the second lever, data. You know, that era of data just freely flowing across borders, that's basically coming to an end. We are seeing this huge, rapid rise in national data localization laws because countries are finally waking up to the fact that unrestricted data access isn't just some economic policy issue. It is a matter of strict national sovereignty. National data repositories are literally becoming the new strategic reserves. And then we have the third lever, human capital. The race for talent is just shifting so incredibly fast right now. The US has completely dominated this for decades, but their lead is definitely eroding because of those restrictive immigration caps we touched on earlier. Meanwhile, China is turning out massive, massive numbers of STEM graduates. And we're seeing some really aggressive moves from places like Canada, the UK, Singapore, and the UAE. They're all stepping up, positioning themselves as these welcoming, shiny new hubs for the absolute best AI engineers and researchers in the world. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on. These AI systems of tomorrow, they're not neutral tools. Not at all. They carry the political and economic values of the systems that build them. So keep a very close eye on the physical infrastructure, watch the data borders, and definitely pay attention to the immigration policies. Because those three levers, that is exactly where the real future of our world is being written right now.